Hello and welcome back, incredible listeners, to Third Eye Talks. I am so very excited about my guest today. I am being joined by Heidi Johnson, who is from Charity Matters. She is a nonprofit founder, storyteller, and believer in good, which I absolutely love and resonate with. Hi, Heidi.
Hi, Naz. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. Heidi and I met in one of these groups that is just wonderful for connecting women. And right off the bat from our first conversation, I was like, I have to have Heidi on Third Eye Talks.
Oh,
I have to because her story and this topic that we're going to talk about today, which is what are you going to do with all that grief, is so important and it's so close to my heart. So I am excited for today. Heidi.
me too. Me too.
So
It's
tell me,
it's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yes. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I want to jump right in because I feel like I have so many questions and we only have 30 minutes to cover it. So
Okay.
I do want to start off by asking you a little bit about your journey and how you ended up with Charity Matters. And I know that's a
Oh
lot.
my gosh. Okay. I'm going to try to make it as short as possible because journeys are long and I've been over 20 years in the nonprofit space. But 22 years ago, in November of 2002, I got that phone call in the middle of the night, the one that we're all warned about that we never want to get. And the phone call was from Mexico. My parents and their best friends, four couples, were on vacation celebrating 60th birthdays, having the time of their lives, so happy. And in the blink of an eye, they were hit by a tour bus, and every couple lost a spouse, three dead, one brain damaged. And my life just changed forever. In that moment, in that phone call, in that instant, everything changed. And at the time I was 35 and I had three little boys, and I was just completely overwhelmed. And my dad was in a coma for a month from the accident, and he woke up a month after finding out that his wife and all of his best friends were gone, like a nightmare. That the funeral had happened, and but he came home on Thanksgiving Day. He came home Thanksgiving Day that year, and it was a remarkable thing. Having died twice in the hospital from the accident, and broken back, bones, legs, you name it. And anyway, a year later, almost to the day, I was invited down to Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where my friend was a Catholic priest. He was the only chaplain for 300,000 kids. And he says, Heidi, I need your help. Come down and bring some friends. And I said, John, I got nothing. I'm running empty. I have nothing to give. And he's like, please. And you just can't say no to a priest, really. So, off the guilt kicked in and off I went. And we weren't in the hospital. I'd never been there. We weren't in the hospital for a few minutes, the 10 of us on this tour. And this woman comes running up, rushing with her child. She was a single mom, new to LA. Her son, she'd been taking him to school, and he was in the drop off line at carpool and was run over by a car. And they were helivac to Children's Hospital. He wasn't supposed to live. And Father John greeted her and this child at the helicopter and sat with her for 8 hours of surgery and came every day for a month and was her emotional lifeline. And she saw us in the hospital and she's running, Father John, I have such great news. I have such great news. Guess what? Guess what? He's like, whoa, slow down. These are my friends. She said, he's going home. He's going home on Thanksgiving Day. And in that moment, my worlds collided. I knew I was being called to serve, and I was being asked to take those lemons and to make some lemonade. And so we started a nonprofit, and that was the beginning of the journey.
Wow. Wow.
That I mean, that was it, right? The
That
lightning bolt. That was it. I was called, and that was it. That
Isn't
was
it
it.
isn't it amazing how those synchronicities work? The fact that your dad went home on Thanksgiving Day and then
Right.
you have this entire experience that it kind of kicks off the next big thing that you do with Charity Matters and with your nonprofits.
Right.
And it's a child who goes home on Thanksgiving Day. I'm never I've never heard so much that I'm still not amazed. You know, I
Right? Because you can't make it up. You just can't. You just can't. It just can't. And it's just, and when you go through loss, there's so many things that happen. There's so many signs. There's so many moments. There's so many. Um, I don't believe in synchronicity anymore, but people might call it synchronicity. These connections and things that you just there's from something else, and they're leading you on the path. And that was very clear to me in that moment, that my path was about to take a huge U-turn, and it did. And
so
it
how is
did.
that? What happens? Because you're walking around with this experience of your own grief, and
Right.
then you're also seeing the grief of others as they're going through it.
Right.
What do you do with that grief? What did you do with it?
Well, you know what? It's kind of interesting. My dad, and this is related, so bear with me for a second. My dad has been in the recycling business since the late 1950s,
Mhm.
before it was hip and trendy. My dad was recycling paper. And in my household, not only growing up, but with my own children, we always talk about taking the trash out. If you have pain, if you're angry, if you've had a bad day, what are you doing with your trash? You don't come in and dump your trash on your mom. You don't dump your trash on your little sister or your brother. What are you doing with the trash? Are you jumping on the trampoline? Are you running on the block? Are you screaming in your pillow? Like, what are you doing? And grief to me was a trash can full of pain, huge. It was a dumpster. It was a 3 yard, it was a monster, monster thing of pain, the most pain I've ever had in my life. And so I didn't think about recycling the pain. I didn't know what to do with the pain. But when this opportunity presented itself and we started a nonprofit, it became the moment for me to take that pain and turn it into purpose. It became fuel for good. It began to give a reason for something. There's no reason for being hit by a bus. But, today, 20 years later, we have a $10 million interfaith center at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. We have 27 chaplains of all faiths. The chaplains are part of the medical team, so they do rounds with the doctors. And we are now a national template of pediatric chaplaincy. So children's hospitals all over the country look to CHLA for how to do this. And I can't say it's just because my mother, because there was a million people in a village that made this happen. This was not just a me thing. This was a huge we thing. Um, but when I think about my mom and think about the hundreds of thousands of children each year that now have, and families that have someone there in those moments, um, how can you not feel some sort of purpose, and that it just something's happened, and that's just, this is life. But
Mhm.
there's this beautiful legacy now that's connected to it, and it gives me such peace. It gives me such peace.
Yeah, I think you just described beautifully something that I always tell people. I'm like, look, you're going to experience grief. You are. It's part of the human experience. How that comes through is unique to you and your experience, but when it happens, you have one of two ways to walk the path of grief. There are only two ways that you can go and something you can do with it. One is you allow it to take over, right? And
Right.
you allow it to just consume your life and you stay kind of in that place for a very long time. You either build protective mechanisms around it or you just stay there, or you do what you did and what so many people do, right? Is
Right.
let me take this and create something with this energy. Because that's really, to me, and I don't know if you agree with this, but to me, grief is a creative power. There's something that you can do with it. Some people take that power, some people don't. Would you agree
Right.
with
And
that?
it's 100% agree with that. And not only that, it's fascinating. We all, as you said, it's part of the human experience. We will all experience it at some point in our life. But what's fascinating is that how many people take the first path that you described.
Mhm.
And so for me, after starting the nonprofit, with these group of friends, we started this and ran it, and I ran it for, I was super involved for 5 years as a volunteer and really got this thing. We started a business. But I went in search of who are these other people who start nonprofits. And really what I discovered, and I didn't know, these are other people that have taken their pain and turned it into purpose, because you don't just wake up and start a nonprofit. It's really hard. You don't start a business that relies on the kindness of others. It's a really bad business model. You don't do that. But but all these people, and at the time, when I did this in 2011, I think it was, there wasn't CNN Heroes, there wasn't People Magazine Heroes Among Us. No one was highlighting these people who are, in my opinion, kind of modern day heroes and who we should be focusing on, people who give up their lives to serve. But most of them have had a really bad hand, and most of them have used it to help other people. And those are my people. And
Mhm.
that's where my path really just has continued to evolve, because I became obsessed with telling their stories and finding out their stories. And over, I'm hearing the same, message of grief, loss. And 99, maybe 95% of people who start nonprofits, in my opinion, of the hundreds, maybe thousands I've interviewed, um, would be a loss. And maybe 3 to 5% were a near miss, that they had such gratitude that they started the nonprofit out of gratitude and a close call.
That's beautiful. That was going to be my next question, which is, you do have your own podcast that features nonprofits and their founders. Have you found a commonality, a personality, a type of personality, or something that they share outside of the grief or the near miss that you can see that it's a thread or
Oh,
something in them?
what a great question. I have to say, I've never gotten off one of these calls or interviews and not been so inspired, so energized, kind of like when you and I had our conversation, so energized, because there is something with these people. And I will say it, once they've gone through the commonality is, once they've gone through the journey of grief and they've used the pain for purpose, they have such enormous gratitude. And because they have such enormous gratitude, they have such incredible joy. And because they have such incredible joy, they have such purpose. And because they have such purpose, they know how to live their life. And it's a formula, right? It's a formula that it's a hard process to get there, but it's a formula for a happy life. And it's, I always kind of think it's like Harry Met Sally, in the movie when Meg Ryan's ordering, she's like, I want what she's having. People, a nonprofit founder could walk into a bar and they would have some joy, you would just say, I want that. I don't know what that is, but I want that, because they're all so joyful, because they help people. That's what they do. They help people every day. And there's nothing better. There's nothing better.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So joy at the end of the day is that common thing that if you
Yeah,
do something with that grief, it turns to something much bigger. And I think that's beautiful. So if you were, let's say, talking to 35-year-old Heidi, who's might be listening right now, right? Someone who's
right,
just very fresh. And I know some of these people listening in are in this group because I coach them and I know they're going through that grief.
right.
What what would you tell them? How do they ensure they go down one path instead of the other? Where can they get started with using the things that they're going through to lead to joy and good and service?
I think there's a lot of things for grief, but I think first, you can't beat yourself up. You have to give yourself grace. And we all know the shower, the car, and the pillow at night are the three worst places to possibly be, because we just lose it constantly. I mean, it's just a fact. So just know that that's going to happen and let it rip. And someone told me, there's a finite amount of tears, and I kind of do believe that. There is a moment you're like, it's never going to stop, but it does. So it is finite, and I think that for people to know that, it feels like it never will, but the waves will stop crashing down. It will get better, but give yourself that grace, give yourself that time. Don't push yourself, and be okay that you're not okay. I mean, I think that that's the first thing with grief. But then I think, I know it sounds a little dharma, a little wacky woo woo, a little out there. But
This is the place, Heidi. This is
I know, you're my people. My husband calls me Dharma. Because the signs are there, and when you sit and you're still with yourself and you give yourself that moment and you trust your voice and you listen and you see, I could have just Thanksgiving Day could have just come and gone and I could have kept going. Could, but so many other signs had happened, so many things had happened that I now knew there were signs and I was now in tune with them. And if you're not being still enough to listen, to see them, to hear them, and to know them, because they are for you and you alone. The sign that, your sister or your dad or somebody else who lost a shared person is not going to be the same as you're going to get. So knowing those, and I'd had so many signs, even before Thanksgiving Day, before that 1 year, that I was like, all right, mom, like just, and so it was like a lightning bolt. It was
yeah.
like a lightning bolt.
Yeah,
So I
I
think that listening to that is really important,
absolutely. I think this is one of those things that can apply through just life. I have so
right?
many people who are like, well, I don't really get signs, or I don't really, I don't feel like my spirit team is communicating with me. And I'm like, wait. First, you're always
Right?
being communicated with. You're always being communicated with. It's whether you have sat, like you said, sat still long enough
Right.
to see it and then to acknowledge it. Because I really feel like your spirit team could be talking to you every single day, and maybe you notice it, but if you don't acknowledge it, that's kind of,
Right.
nothing
Right.
happens. So it's that cycle of become aware, sit still, become aware, and then say, okay, that was a little bit different. So I acknowledge that that was
Right.
not something that happens
Right.
to me all the time. And then they start to communicate more and more. Did you find that that was the case for you? Like once you noticed, like, mom, I get it. Did she start to become
Yeah. Well,
clear?
I think it was stronger in the beginning for sure. The
Mhm.
energy was definitely stronger in the beginning, but I will say, I had a bunch of little things that happened that were little, just like a lot of angel things, a lot of our street number kept coming up in all sorts of crazy places, just some little weird things like that. That was like, that's weird. Wow, everything has that address. Wow, that's weird. That number's everywhere. My son moved to college, well, a little bit after that, but I mean, this number just kept showing itself up. But
Yeah.
then I had kind of a big thing that happened the day before my parents left for Mexico. My mom bought 3 raffle tickets one for each of my sisters and myself, and I didn't know this, but she did. And my mom died in November. May, I got a phone call that I won a first class cruise anywhere in the world for 2 weeks. Okay. And I said to my husband, my mom wanted me to do this. Well, my mom had been planning a trip with my dad, a surprise trip for my dad, to go to Paris that year to see Lance Armstrong win the Tour de France. My dad, well, if he listens, he'll hear it, but he to this day did not know about this. So don't tell my dad, listeners, and it would devastate him. So my husband and my mom were secretly planning this trip. So I win this thing and I say, the phone rings randomly, like an hour ringing it. And it's my friend who has a place in Paris, the only person I know in Paris. And I've been there with my mom. And I tell her I just on this trip. She's like, you need to come to Paris first. Your mom wants you to come to Paris. Okay. So we go to Paris and then no sign. And then we get on this cruise and we go to all these places and no sign, no sign, no sign. And I'm like, wow, I thought I was so sure I was getting a sign. And the last place we get to, my husband opens the window, and this is, whatever, it's 2003. And my husband says, oh my gosh, Saddam Hussein's right over there. And we left our 3 kids at home. And what are we doing here? And what are we doing in Turkey? And what is this place, Ephesus? And I said, I don't know. We're going on a tour. Even though I went to church, who knew St. John to the Ephesians? Who knew that Jesus was dying on the cross? And John said, get my mom out of here, get Mary, Virgin Mary, to Ephesus and keep her safe. So I knew nothing about Ephesus. We go on this tour and we walk in. There's a picture of me in front of Virgin Mary's house, like, woohoo, okay, go to Virgin Mary's house, it's cool. And I've given up on the signs. I'm done. Like, it's not happening. It's whatever. And I like to talk. And I was struck silent for 3, 4, 3.5 hours. I could not speak. Tears poured. like I can't even explain. I mean, the feeling of love, the feeling of my mother, I have never in my life ever, ever had this feeling. It makes me cry. I mean, it was so huge. It was so powerful. It was so all consuming. And my husband just looks at me and he goes, "Is this it?" I was nodded my head, yes. He said, do you want me to write on the wishing wall?" Nodded my head, yes. Do you want holy water?" Nodded my head, yes. "Are you okay?" "No." But yes, and after that, I was not hyper vigilant, but I knew there was just not a question in my mind that it was my mother, whatever you wanted to believe, God, love, light, my mom, the universe. To me, it's all one and the same. It was
Mhm.
love. It was definitely love. And so the Thanksgiving thing happened after that. That was in the summer, and Thanksgiving happened in that fall. So I was now hyper attuned. I really knew. There was no doubting. There
I
was no doubting.
Oh my goodness. I love that story. And
Yeah.
I love moments like those, and I love experiencing them, and I love hearing that experience from others because
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful part of our human experience to connect that way to signs, to messages, to feelings that come
Right.
from our loved ones and our ancestors. I absolutely love that. I'm so happy that your mom was able to that you trusted, first of all, and that
Yeah.
your mom was able to really deliver that feeling to you, and then you could become so aware that you were able to connect all of those dots.
I com- and to be in Ephesus, Turkey, like of all, I'd been to all the other places with her. So I'm like,
Yeah.
come on, mom, we've been to these places together, all the places on the cruise. The only place I'd never been, she never been, as far as I know, was
Yeah.
Ephesus. And there of all the places in all the world, that's where it happened. Yeah. So I've just continued to, the signs are not as much strong anymore, but there are moments that I feel her or that I'll see that number and know. And there's a song that comes on all the time in the weirdest times, and I know it's her. And so those are and they give me such joy and peace. I
Yeah.
get such peace from those. They make me so happy.
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. I always tell people like I hate saying this. It doesn't sound right, but I am happy that your grief brought you here
Mhm.
because it really is, and it's
Right?
a feeling. And I have clients who are like, look, this feels weird to say, but I think that if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be here. And I love
Right.
it. And I feel like this is the gift that the people I lost or the person I lost is giving me. And
Yeah.
you begin to walk that path. This is what I've experienced in my own life too. It's like, I had a cousin, spoke to you about it, but my cousin who passed, it became like, okay, now I want to walk this life and have these experiences for both of us. So it's like you take
Oh, right.
the
Right.
people who are not able to now have that physical experience, but you bring them with you. And there's just so much, as bizarre as it sounds, there's so much beauty in grief. There's so
So
much.
much. So much. And I think the biggest thing that we get in grief besides a rebirth is we get I mean I got a lot of things, but one, my mother died, she was 60, she was young, and I'm 58 now. I'm almost the age that she was, right? So the two gifts that I got, but I think they're kind of the same, is how precious and short our lives are and how we use our time and what matters. And so 35-year-old me was worried about this party and that and this play date and whatever. And 36-year-old me, even 37-year-old me, didn't care about the party, didn't care about, I mean, life became very clear of where I was going to spend my time, who I was going to spend my time with, and how I was going to use my time. And to this day, everything I do is service. I mean, if it doesn't matter if it's being on a board, it's running a nonprofit, which I do as a day job, it's writing a book, it's doing the podcast, it's doing the magazine column, whatever it is. If I'm not serving, I don't do it. I mean, that's just it creates these filters,
Yeah.
like when you say I want to get a red car and all of a sudden every car you see is red. grief puts a lot of filters and makes you really focus on what matters. And I think that's the gift of the rebirth.
Mhm.
It's that to me is the biggest gift, is how to live your life and how to use your time.
Yeah, it's clarity. Like you said, it's just clarity. You see your path ahead of you and you're just like, I know exactly what I'm here for and the direction
Right.
I'm going. So I do agree and I think grief just brings so much beauty with it that it's one of the gifts. It brings all of these gifts with it. So I'm
It
glad,
does.
yeah, and I'm glad that it brought you everything that you're doing and that we now get to watch you and experience you and see your impact. So I am really, really happy that you are in this place. And I want everybody to find you. I know you work with nonprofit founders.
I
You
do.
like to help not, people who have stories and they really want to kick off those nonprofits. Where can we find you regardless if we want to talk about our grief, if we want to talk about nonprofit, where do we
I'm
get more Heidi?
I'm good for all of it. So you can go to charity-matters.com is our website, Charity Matters, and get weekly newsletters. Our podcast will be there as well every week. You can go to Instagram at Charity Matters. And then I have a new book coming out called Change for Good that will be out, I know, October 15th. It'll be at Amazon, Change for Good. That's really, and we definitely have a chapter on grief and signs and all of that. And it's the journey of not only my journey, but the journey of all these nonprofit founders and the life lessons we've learned in finding joy. And it's really, when we think about change, we sometimes think about losing weight, getting rich, or getting thin. But when we die at the end of our life, no one's going to ask what we weighed or what was in our bank. They're going to want to know what we did for other people. And so this book is really inspirational self-help and really sharing these life lessons like the ones we just talked about. So Change for Good, and you'll be able to get it on Charity Matters as well and Amazon after October 15th.
Oh my goodness. All right, listeners, you heard it here first. October 15th, go and get your copy of the book and absolutely go and follow and connect with Heidi. I think this was an incredible episode, and I'm so happy that you were here to share your story with us and to again put that little touch on what it means to have a life of service and how incredibly joyous it can be. So thank you for joining me on the podcast, Heidi.
Thank you, Naz. You're the best. It's so much fun. I could talk to you all day. We need to make
I,
an hour
I
episode
know.
so we can talk some more.
I agree. I agree. It was so good having you on the show. And listeners, connect with Heidi. And of course, I will see you next time on Third Eye Talks.